Welcome everyone, I'm Spiro, joined with the founder and editor of Newsbud, Sibel Edmonds.
Hello everyone.
We recently returned from an extended overseas trip, and we have some major information that needs to get out right away to counter certain ongoing covert and psychological operations which could have some serious impacts on Iran. Now, Sibel, right out of the gate, can you just briefly, what is the bottom line?
Well, after our overextended 2-month trips all over Middle East and the places we visited and the people we have met, sources, reliable sources that I have spoken with, I have to tell you that everything currently you are reading on Iran, including the latest with the Mujahideen Khalq, MEK, they're nothing but smoke. Because a lot of serious operations have been taking place for the past year and a half. And I'm talking about operations that nobody has talked about to this date. There is not a single mentioning of it anywhere in the media. And the information I have gathered, these are from people with firsthand information who have access to intelligence from Western countries, including the United States, Canada, and people who have taken trips. They have been in and out of Iran. So we have some major expose here on what has been really taking place in Iran and what the real plan is when it comes to Iran.
Now, Sibel, we have a lot to cover here, and what you just said, there's so many directions we could go right off the bat, but one of the things that jumps out at me is you're saying that these operations have been going on for over a year and a half at this point. Well, Iran recently started becoming a hot button issue in the news, and we're seeing it in the headlines more and more just in the past few months or so, several months, with some of the protests that have been taking place there. It's not getting too much coverage in the Western press. So how does that fit together?
Well, actually, it's been happening for almost 2 years. If you remember, and I know our subscribers, our community members, they know the roundtable we had, this roundtable discussion we had, and this was right before the conclusion of the presidential elections here in the United States. And we went around the table and we engaged in prediction based on information. Prediction, I'm talking about informed prediction based on data, intelligence, and also looking at the context and what has been taking place. And we will be showing this, the clip from our roundtable almost 2 years ago. And here is what I had to say. What's going to come into fruition with Iran? I know they have put the lid on it temporarily towards the end of Obama's presidency, but Iran issue is not dead. It's going to be revived no matter who's going to be the president, whether it's going to be Trump or Hillary Clinton. Obama had on his plate Libya and Syria, and to a certain degree continuation of Afghanistan, well, with Yemen through Saudi Arabia, but I believe the shift is going to be going back to Iran again, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Trump, and I would love to get Philip's take on this. As you can see, I said no matter who gets elected, the next big, major international operation is going to be Iran, whether it is Trump or Clinton. And why is that? Because at that point, a lot of things were taking place on Syria. And we're going to get to that momentarily. But these operations and the plan, and let's call that Plan A for Iran, started about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And of course, it just recently, a few months ago, this information in a controlled manner started becoming headline news, major news in Western media. For example, we started seeing all these reports on strikes in Iran. I was in the area. We were talking to people. I met several Iranians. Every single one of these protests that we have been hearing about, have they been taking place? Absolutely, yes. What is the scale of it? It's fairly significant, but it is not really, really big. But every single one of these stem from economic reasons. So the economic pressure, the economic war against Iran started escalating recently, okay? And this is against a country whose economy has been suffering with all the sanctions, which we know has been going on for decades, but it has escalated in the last few months. What we are seeing with the embargo and the sanctions on oil, for example, what we are witnessing with currency crisis in Iran. And all these translates to what? It translates to unemployment, the services that governments provides for the country. They have to cut back, and they have cut back on these services. Okay. One good example of it is all these protests that have been taking place in Iran based on environmental issues, because the pollution problem in Iran has gone out of control. I mean, whether it's the air pollution, especially in major cities such as Tehran. For example, Tehran is one of the mega cities. You're looking at over 10, 12 million population in Tehran. And without real implementation of emission control, etc., the air pollution has reached such levels that when I was talking with some of the Iranians, they were saying regularly, almost on weekly basis, they get advisories saying, do not get out of your house because the air quality has gotten so bad. Add to that, you have recent back-to-back several years drought. Well, that has dried up the water resources in Iran. And on top of it, with the little water that they have been experiencing major health issues with water treatment. For example, recently, and we are going to provide the link for our audience, and I don't know if this even received any coverage here in the Western media, had to do with the polluted water, and these are tap water, in south of Iran, in particular in a city of Khuzestan, which is right in the south, where over 350 people got seriously ill, and they have been hospitalized with diarrhea, with fever. Of course, currently the explanation is the extreme level of pollution, and the government is not doing enough to address the issue. But even that one has a question mark, how organic this issue of water pollution and having hundreds of people being hospitalized in Iran really comes from. Is it organic or isn't it? We are researching, we are in touch with other people, with our sources. So we're going to have more updates on that. So when you have these economic, warfare tactics, targeting the nation's employment, currency rate, because their economy depends on oil. You have the pollution issues. And if, when you're looking at a target country, you escalate this, of course, as a natural reaction, what you're going to see is protest, people getting angry, people are not satisfied, people are getting impatient. When their belly is empty, it's like looking to governments and saying, what are you going to do about all this stuff? And we know a lot of these issues are outside their control, the government there, because these pressures, these influences, these effects are coming based on the plan that has been in implementation for a year and a half plus on Iran. So you see protests. The protests mainly, they have nothing to do with the government or the corruption or the fact that they want to have a different government. It all has to do with economy. I mean, people say it's all about economy, all the wars that you're seeing is stupid. Same thing for internal unrest that we are seeing in Iran. Now, taking this, the Western media added another element in the last month or so. What element is that? And that is MEK, which stands for Mujahedin Khalq. We just published the recent news on the arrest that was made. Supposedly, you have an Iranian diplomat and 5 others who were supposedly, allegedly planning to blow up MEK event in France, okay? Again, this hasn't been 100% clarified. We don't know the details of it, not as much as we need. But MEK, whether with the mayor, former mayor Giuliani, with several very well known people in Congress, and government officials from the US ally nations, United Kingdom, France, Germany, even Albania. Albania began harboring MEK after the major faction was kicked out of Iraq because they had moved to Iraq because their whole goal was, with the help with the United States during this whole Iraq war, to position themselves in Iraq against Iran for operation in Iran. Well, that particular plan fell through and they had to leave Iraq. Well, Albania, as an ally of the United States, harbored them. So there's a large number in Albania. So with these Western governments, EU, NATO members' support, and the mainstream media, and the misguided alternative media, a lot of things being pumped on MEK. Well, I tell you what this is. I mean, we have another recent development on MEK, and let's just read the names and you give us explanation and a little bit of an overall picture of how this spotlight right now is shining on MEK issue.
Well, MEK was designated as a terrorist group by the United States just until 2012, right off the bat. So just a little bit of background there. You're going to fill us in with some more background, but as you mentioned, this Iranian diplomat and 5 other people were arrested for allegedly attempting to bomb this rally, and they're calling it a rally. They say that these suspects had in their possession explosive material and a detonator. Like you said, we need more information about this at this point in time. But this wasn't just some rally, like a protest or something. This was more like a star-studded gala. I mean, it was like an awards show. And in attendance at the rally, you mentioned President Trump's current legal advisor and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and various different heads, former heads of state, high-level governments. The former House of Representatives Speaker Newt Gingrich was there. Many leading politicians from the U.S., Europe, and the Middle East. And we're talking about current and former members of parliament for various different countries as well, former prime ministers, former attorney generals, former FBI directors, and the whole main theme of this MEK-sponsored rally was regime change in Iran. And MEK has some interesting close ties and a little bit of a history there with the current National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who spoke at the event last year. And it's not like all of these high-level people are just attending these events, out of the kindness of their hearts. For example, it's estimated that John Bolton has received upwards of $180,000 for multiple speaking engagements sponsored by the MEK.
Behavior and the objectives of the regime are not going to change, and therefore the only solution is to change the regime itself.
So this, to me, raises a lot of questions. It's like, okay, so this event was supposedly attempted to be bombed. MEK, where are they getting all this money? I mean, from what I understand, it's a relatively small group, but they have very powerful and influential ties to some of the highest levels of government with the common interest of regime change is what it boils down to. It's what it appears to be from where I'm standing.
Absolutely, right on. And I tell you what, let me sum it up. It's nothing but smoke. It's bullshit. It's BS. This is diversion of attention. Are they planning regime change in Iran? Absolutely. Has this plan been in effect for more than a year and a half? Yes. Is it going to have anything to do with MEK? I can answer you with 100% certainty based on information I have gathered from my Iranian sources, from my Western intelligence sources, while overseas in the Middle East, okay? Absolutely, it's not going to have anything to do with MEK. This is diversion tactic. This is getting people, not only people in the Western countries, but even people in Iran, people in the Middle East, to keep looking at MEK and thinking this is the plan A. They're going to use MEK and we're going to have a situation similar to Syria, and that's what's going to happen. It's not. And I tell you exactly what's going to happen. But before we go there, I want to have another flashback here. We had the attempted coup in Turkey 2 years ago, correct? A year before this attempted coup, I had a similar session on video, on record. I announced that there will be a coup attempt, a coup plan is on its way in Turkey. I was the only human on this planet to come out and put this out there. And at the time, it was received by many people booing, saying, oh, there hasn't been a real coup in Turkey since 1980, 1981. That's BS. There is no chance of that. Guess what? Less than a year later, I became the headline news all over the world saying, well, maybe because I'm getting my information from the CIA or from Turkish government or Russia or whatever. They accused me of saying, how did she have this information? And with that in mind, let's play this clip for our audience. And this was months, almost a year before the coup attempt in Turkey. You're looking at a country that is about to economically collapse anytime now. And your question was on Erdogan. And when you ask, well, what's happening and what's going to happen with Erdogan, that's going to be the major factor determining what's going to happen with Erdogan's administration. They have formed this date on November 7th or 20th for the election. But if this economic collapse happens before then, let's say by October, which is highly likely that it will take place, then you may look at the big major possibility of a period of pure chaos and violence, followed by possibly another military coup in Turkey, which will be the Operation Gladio and the rulers basically taking back the Turkish government, which took place, Turkish military coup, which is always backed and done with the United States, by the United States. We had it in 1981, we had it in 1997. The pretext for that would be the country is collapsing. We have all this violence. The economy has collapsed. So this is time for a military coup to reestablish order and maintain order. So that would be, if the collapse occurred before the coming election, which is highly likely, we are looking at high possibility of another coup in Turkey, unfortunately. Now, are you ready? The plan A, in effect, has been in effect for Iran for a year and a half. Is regime change? Yes. But how? There is going to be all these operations, and these operations have been already underway, okay? Targeting Iran regime change. This has nothing to do with MEK. It's going to have totally this look of taking place organically inside the country, okay? And it is not going to be, it's going to appear as if it has to do with nationalism, people in Iran making it happen, irrelevant, without any support from the United States, by people in Iran, who are going to appear as if they have no ties or any support, no support from the Western governments. It's not MEK. And it's not going to be some kind of ISIS operations, the Syria scenario. Here is what they have been doing with Iran. There has been recruitment by the Western military intelligence high-level officials, Americans, British, contacting military, high-level military people in Iran. And let me pause here. Iran's armed forces, Iran's military, is made of several components. One component of it is the Revolutionary Guard. These are the Revolutionary Guard directly connected to the Iranian government, okay? They support Hezbollah, etc. Their number of approximately 500,000 force power in Iran is only about 1/3 of the Iran's military. Okay, there are about 135,000 of Revolutionary Guard Division. But there are other components of the Iranians' armed forces. Here is what happened about a year ago. They targeted the Western nations and made contact with, they had secret meetings with some of the high-level Iranian military officials. Okay, you're looking at generals, lieutenant generals, high-level colonels, okay, outside Iran. Some of them were in Syria, and we will get to that later, and some of these meetings were facilitated by Assad. Some of these meetings happened in Afghanistan, and at least 2 meetings happened in Yemen, okay? This is the offer. This is the ultimatum the Western intelligence military factions provided the Iranians, high-level military factions. They said there are 2 possible plans for Iran, okay? We are going to topple this regime. Now, plan B is we do it, and this is the Western nations, and it's going to be much, much, much worse than Syria scenario. And it is our estimate that close to 3 to 3.5 million casualties are going to result in Iran when we take on that plan B, okay? With plan B, majority of you, the armed forces of Iran, will be wiped out. So you're going to be among those deaths. And here are the plans. They even show the plans of how many weeks the war, airstrikes, etc. were going to take place targeting Iran. And it was going to result in 3 to 3.5 million deaths. But that is our option B. Our plan A, on the other hand, has to do with you. And meaning, if you want to save your own lives, if you want to save the civilian lives, millions of them in Iran, it's up to you to topple the government with a coup, military coup, and we'll give you face-saving, okay, tool. You make it clear that you still are anti-United States and the Western government, and it's going to happen based on your nationalism, saying this is for the good of the Iranians, this is for the economic welfare of the Iranians, this is for the lives at stake in Iran, and the fact that you, the military forces implementing this coup, are receiving no support and you're not in any way have or planning to have any ties with us, meaning NATO, US. That is for the public, the people in Iran. But behind the scenes, okay, behind the scenes, we will be supporting this because we promise we will lift the sanctions. Okay, the same oil revenue you had even pre-revolution is going to be back. Of course, you're going to buy arms from us, even if it's indirectly through other European EU members. So it's your decision whether it's going to be option A or option B. Well, a lot of these military, these are pretty elite, sophisticated military high-level officials. Many of them had sent their kids, and they still have children who are studying in universities in Western countries, in the US, in England, elsewhere in Europe, in some of the other EU and US ally members in the Middle East, such as Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, okay? And they have been forming alliance with other high-level military people, okay, inside Iran. And they are still, right now, currently, they're on a standby. So, with increasing the economic pressure, with protests spreading, so people are going to say, okay, Sibel, are you saying these protests are not organic? I'm going to say the answer is yes and no. The fact that people in Iran are protesting, it's happening, okay? This is not being, most of it, created fakely by some Western sources in Iran. But the reason they are protesting, those reasons are being created with this extreme high-level pressure against Iran economically. Because I don't care which country you are. You have your economy collapsing, you're going to riot, you're going to protest. This is providing that bed, that environment for Plan A being implemented by certain faction of Iran military, okay? In Iran, with a coup when they're going to remove the current administration, some people want to refer to it as a regime, I'm going to say the current government. And it's going to be supported by the public because they are going to make it clear that they are not allies of the Western countries, that they are doing it for the people of Iran. They are doing it in the name of nationalism. They are doing it to stop these economic downfall, crash. And they are doing it to save millions of lives. Now, the clock is ticking for them. The US, the Western nations, they are doing their parts. We just saw recently India folding because with the oil sanction for weeks, India said, we are not going to go along with that. We have close to 1.5 billion population. We need Iran's oil. This is going to ruin us. No to US pressure for going along with these oil sanctions against Iran. They were so adamant about it. 3 days ago, India folded. They announced, they said, okay, fine, we're going to go along with the sanction. Japan, for example, they have been relying partially on Iran oil. And they were screaming behind the scenes saying, this is going to cost close to $1 billion a year of damage to Japanese economy, okay? And we don't want this behind the scenes. They folded. They said they nodded yes. Do you know why? Because behind the scenes, the United States government is assuring them. They are assuring them it's temporary. They are saying that in order for this faction of Iran military to implement this coup, for the few months that we have, everybody should go along with it. And it's going to end. They're going to get their oil cheap again from Iran. This is not a long-term plan. So this is so important. If we have Iranians watching this, okay, if we have Iranians watching this, which I know we have because we even have many members from Iran, who some of them are expats, they are living elsewhere in the world. But this is the plan concocted, put together, and put as an offer before military faction in Iran, okay? And it's going to take place, I would say, in less than 6 months. What they want is, they want this protest to spread. They want the economy to get worse, okay? They want pollution to get worse. They want to have some outbreak of disease in Iran, okay? People getting hospitalized. And that is basically a domino effect, where people are engaged in uprising, not because they support NATO, not because they are pro-US, not because it has anything to do with MEK. MEK doesn't even have 1% following in Iran by Iranians in the country. If there were a democracy and elections and MEK were to get included, they wouldn't even form 1% of the vote. This is the smoke, because right now they want people in the US, people outside the US, people in Iran looking and saying, here is so obvious, this is the Western plan. They are propping up MEK, they're going to arm them, they're going to use ISIS, we're going to have another Syria scenario. Wrong. That is not what's going to happen. They want you to look at this while they are doing this on the side. There is a large, powerful military faction that have said yes. They want to save their own lives, save the lives of 3.5 million Iranians, and they need these economic pressure to garner public support in Iran for a regime change via coup. How sure am I of this? 100%. How reliable are my sources, both in Iran, but also within the Western intelligence? I tell you, they are 100% reliable. Now, from this point on, we are going to have the only, as the only outlet providing coverage regularly, starting from tomorrow, not only in-depth analysis, but also other news, other developments that I am receiving, we are receiving from our sources. And Newsbud is going to be, I guess, the only channel providing this because it's really bewildering, Spiro, to see how everybody unquestioningly following the debate placed before them via mainstream media and bullshit alternative media, looking at MEK saying, here is what looks like is going to happen. No, it's not. And please stay tuned because a lot of things have been happening on Syria as well. Okay, and it's not what you think. The Syria issue is going to basically be over as far as externally, meaning what we are seeing with operations, US, Israel, etc., is going to be limited to internal havoc that's going to continue in some smaller scales within the country. But a deal was made with Assad regime. I'm going to be talking about that. I met with my sources. I got inside scoop on meetings between Assad, Russia, and Western intelligence sources, officials, including US and Canada, in Syria a year and a half ago. And that will be for another segment. One quick add-on here has to do with Russia, because rightfully people are going to say, well, what is Russia's position on this? Russia participated on Plan A because Russia would not to Plan A, because with Plan A of coup in Iran by military faction under nationalism, it's going to look like Iran still remains independent and anti-West. That will remain in place. That is not going to change, at least as window dressing. And that is good enough for Russia. Russia has been on board. Russia is also included in Plan A. Things may look different as the coup goes on its way. It may look different. It may look like some posturing between the Western governments, military, and Russia. But again, that will be window dressing. This is a plan that everybody has agreed upon, including Russia.
Well, this is some bombshell, big-time information with some very serious and very real implications that could literally affect the lives of millions of people. This is everyone needs to spread this information, to talk about it. We're going to be, like you said, Sibel, we're going to have much more in-depth coverage coming up very soon, so stay tuned to newsbud.com. And for those of you who do not know or may not be familiar with Sibel Edmonds and your background, you were recruited by the FBI. They came and sought you out right after 9/11 because of your background, because of your skills, your language skills. You're from Turkish and Iranian descent. You lived in Iran. You speak the languages. You were there during the revolution. So I mean, just a little bit of background there, and that we do have more information about you, your background, your stories on our site. You've written books. There's a lot of information out there, and stay tuned for more coverage coming up very soon on Iran. Like you said, a lot of information is still going to be coming out, and watch for a big report coming out on Syria very soon. For newsbud.com, I'm Spiro. Thank you for your support.